Hello, I am Christy, your friendly online speech-language pathologist and specialist in children's communication development, including behavior, because as you know by now, behavior is a type of communication. Welcome to the Chirp YouTube channel. This is where we talk about children's development, especially communication and behavior. Now, if you have been following along for the last few months, you know that we are doing a kind of a long series on something called the pyramid model. This is a long series because the pyramid model describes how from the bottom up we can create an environment that prevents and hopefully eliminates challenging behaviors that are difficult to deal with normally. And this started out at the very bottom. We skipped the workforce part because there's nothing we can do in our homes to prepare a helpful workforce. But then we moved, I have this all written down, the videos that we have already done. Then we talked about how to create a supportive environment. This includes safety, visuals, consistency, developmental appropriateness, and appropriate and healthful nutrition. At least those are the topics that I discussed in my series. Now there are 5 different videos. There's one for each of those subtopics. And then we moved to tier 2 of the pyramid model, which was nurturing and responsive relationships. And we discussed keeping ourselves calm, which is super challenging, monitoring and adjusting, joining and amplifying, positive investments, and non-coercion. There's a link right there to the playlist where all these videos are clumped together, so you can start at the beginning and watch all the way through if you want to catch up in this series. But each video is also helpful on its own because each topic is useful in your practice or in your home. This next tier that we're going to be discussing is about targeted social emotional supports. Social emotional skills are the number one type of skill that a child needs in order to be successful, not just at managing herself, but at going forth into academia, going forth into the world and a job, and being able to manage herself well. Why is it important to teach social emotional skills? I am a good example of this. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I did not have very good social emotional skills as a child. I have grown up into a reasonably functional adult, but it has taken some work on my part to understand what emotions I'm feeling and to be able to deal with them in appropriate ways. Now I have much more of a sense of equilibrium. I can talk about my emotions better. And if you're wondering why this is important to talk about our emotions, since we have so many generations behind us of people who chose not to talk about their emotions, not to share emotional things, not to talk about their feelings, and somehow they survived. Okay, perhaps they survived, but did they thrive? Did they have lives that were healthy, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, as well as physically? These pieces of ourselves, they don't exist just to be squished down. I didn't function very well in a certain portion of my elementary school years because I did not have the skills to understand what I was feeling and to deal with those feelings in appropriate ways. It's important to me that other kids don't have that same experience, but that they feel empowered by understanding emotions, by being taught how to tell what they're feeling and what are appropriate ways to deal with it. So we know that health-wise, social emotional skills are important. What I haven't mentioned yet is that it's important to teach kids these skills because it helps them academically. They're much likelier to do well in school if they have the basis of managing their emotions well. and their relationships, not just emotions, but relationships between people. Also, they're less likely to go to prison and to need that sort of intervention later. If you can imagine, if I don't know how to manage my anger or my sense of grief or loss, I might try to mask whatever ickiness I'm feeling by using drugs or by stealing things. It only makes sense that if we don't have coping strategies, we're going to choose poor methods to deal with what's going on inside us. We don't want kids to suffer, and teaching these skills is a great way to prevent suffering. Also, our kids with developmental diagnoses or delays don't naturally pick up on some of these things. I didn't naturally pick up on these things, and I don't have a developmental delay. But the kids who do, they're going to need even more explicit teaching. Now we have discussed why it's important to teach these skills. We're going to talk about how to recognize deficits. A deficit is a gap. So if I need this skill at this level in order to function well in a back and forth relationship that I have with you, but I'm only functioning here, there's this gap. That's a deficit. And we can see these deficits when we work with our students. I'm going to use 4 different examples throughout this video and the 4 following videos in this social emotional section of the pyramid model. And I'm going to talk about each of these 4 behaviors, examples, in each of the following videos. The first one is me. I'm going to use myself as an example. My behavior that demonstrated my deficit, my multiple deficits, was crying. I cried a lot, probably every day in 2nd grade, and a lot outside of school also. That was my behavior. Kids who are crying, in my case, I had some deficits. I can list some of them for you. I did not know how to ask for help. I did not know how to recognize when I was overwhelmed, and I did not know how to ask for a break. I did not know how to calm myself down because I had never really gotten pushed that hard before, because everything had been pretty easy up until that point. Those are just some of the deficits that existed in me that created that behavior of crying all the time. I'm sure it was no end of frustrating to my teachers and my parents. Another behavior where you could see a deficit is hitting. We see a lot of hitting in the special ed world. It's a lack of skills. In some cases, maybe hitting is a lack of regulation because of sensory needs. Perhaps that kid has a need for some extra input. That's a lack of skills. Getting that input in a different way would be more appropriate. Perhaps that child doesn't know how to get someone's attention, and hitting is the way to do that. Perhaps that child doesn't know how to express frustration. Perhaps that child doesn't have self-advocacy skills to say, "Stop it, that's mine." There are lots of different deficits here why a child might be hitting. We can work on those, and we will be working on those in the upcoming videos. The next behavior is running away, which we also call elopement in the developmental disabilities world. Sounds so pleasant, eloping. It's not pleasant, it's very dangerous because kids, of course, can run into very dangerous situations. Running away could be caused by lack of ability to respond appropriately to stimuli. Maybe the classroom's too loud, but the child doesn't know how to ask for headphones or say, "Hey, turn it down." Once again, maybe this is a self-advocacy deficit. The child doesn't know how to say, "Don't be so close to me," and so they just run away. Perhaps the child doesn't, like I didn't know, perhaps this child doesn't know how to ask for a break. We all need breaks sometimes, and we adults don't read children so well. Sometimes we expect them to be able to focus unendingly and just continue to be able to work as long as we can. Kids can't do that, especially if they have some sort of delay. They need breaks, and sometimes they will do certain behaviors to get a break because they don't know how to ask for one. The fourth behavior we're going to talk about is making fun of people. Now, why would you think that this is a social emotional skills deficit? If you think of the idealized version of any person, the version that is the most mature and the most like your vision of a deity, does that person mock other people? Does that person poke fun at people or make practical jokes that are harmful? Does that person make fun of other people? No, that person does not, because those behaviors are a sign of a skills deficit. You may think this is weird, but honestly, if I understand your perspective, this is a very high level skill. So we're going all the way from running away and crying and hitting all the way up to making fun of someone, which it's a high level skill to be able to recognize that when I'm making fun of someone, it shows my own immaturity. Because what I'm doing is I'm likening us to each other, and I'm finding you wanting. I don't understand your perspective well enough to be able to be kind and compassionate to you. I am unable to see your humanity and to realize the importance of you as a being. That's a lack of skills. And as you can see, it exists throughout our societies, throughout the world. If we understood the humanity of every other person on the planet, and creature and plant, imagine how different our world would be. We can start teaching this very early so that children don't grow up into adults who abuse animals or who give other people on the freeway the finger because they feel that they've been assaulted by someone who passed them. These behaviors are a lack of skills, and we may not realize it because they are so common, but we can still and should still be working on these skills in ourselves, and we should be teaching them to the next generation so that hopefully the next generation will do better than we have done, will be a more peaceful generation than we are, and will be a more centered and calm generation than we have been so far. Now that we have talked through these 4 different behaviors, I don't wish you to think that these are the only 4 behaviors that come from a social emotional skills deficit. Almost every behavior has some level of social emotional skills deficit in it. And this is why we're going through the behavior pyramid model after we did the series on sensory challenges and different needs in the sensory arena. We can't assess behavior without having first assessed the sensory needs of our students or children and made sure that those needs are being met. Those needs need to be met first. Whatever's left over, we can deal with in the behavior model that we are working on right now, starting out at the bottom of the pyramid and moving up towards the top. The goal is that as we build the wider base tiers, we won't need to do as many of the targeted interventions at the top because the children won't need to go there. Their behavior will stay calm because of all the nice foundational supports that we've built in to the classroom or to their homes. But if you see a child spitting or hitting or trying to run or ripping up books or pulling things off the wall, and you know it's not a sensory need because we've already talked about those and you've already assessed your child and you're getting good supports for that and you're practicing those sensory behaviors all day long, then this is something that we need to purposefully teach strategies to our children so that they can respond to internal forces in more appropriate ways. Whenever you look at a child and you think that behavior is not appropriate, or when a behavior just really bugs you, that's because it's not a socially appropriate behavior. And we can teach replacement behaviors. And in fact, that's our job. So between now and the next video on this topic, I want you to be cogitating and to be watching your child or your student or your many students. And I want you to be paying attention to which behaviors are really bugging you or which behaviors are clearly inappropriate in the classroom, in your home, in public, wherever. Keep a list, and you can even leave some of them in the comments box down below if you would like, so that I can incorporate those into upcoming videos. Thank you for watching. It's always a pleasure. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.